The first tremor in my world appeared on a quiet Tuesday in April. Nothing dramatic, no alarms, no accusations, just a subtle shift, an uneasy stillness inside the offices I had nurtured for over 3 decades. As I walked through the open workspace of Harrington Advisory Group, conversations stalled. Smiles that once carried warmth now flickered briefly before vanishing like lights dimming in a storm. I tried to dismiss the feeling smoothing the lapels of my gray suit as I made my way toward my office. At 61, I'd learned to trust my instincts. They rarely betrayed me. My late husband used to joke that I could sniff out a ledger discrepancy from 2 floors away. He wasn't wrong. Morning, Mom. The voice belonged to Andrew, my only son. At 34, tall and perfectly groomed, he carried the air of someone who believed the world owed him a nod of respect. Beside him glided his wife Sabrina, radiating elegance in a crimson dress that looked more suited to a runway than an office corridor. "Clara, darling." Sabrina cooed, air-kissing my cheeks with her customary perfume trailing behind. The meeting with the Jenkins family went splendidly. They're increasing their contract by 30%. I froze. The Jenkinses? Their review wasn't scheduled until next month. A shadow flickered across Andrew's expression, quickly masked. "They called last week," he explained smoothly. "I handled it while you were tied up with the Weston account." I nodded, though I had no recollection of being particularly busy with Weston. Before I could press further, Andrew steered the conversation towards safer ground. "And how did the Westons respond to your concerns about expansion?" I allowed the subject to drift, but in the back of my mind, a red flag had been raised. Later that morning, I noticed something else. Sabrina's diamond bracelet, new undoubtedly expensive, caught the light as she clutched Andrew's arm. His watch gleamed too, another luxury piece I didn't recognize. Their lifestyle had taken a leap recently, a German car designer wardrobes and now jewelry. Yes, Andrew's compensation was generous, and Sabrina's role as marketing director paid well, but not enough to fund such extravagance. Instead of heading to my office, I turned toward accounting. My assistant, Helen Tran, had always been my confidant, but instinct told me to tread carefully. David Kent, the firm's head accountant, looked startled when I appeared unannounced. "Mrs. Harrington, we weren't expecting you today. I thought I'd take a look at the quarterly expense reports," I said lightly. David's throat bobbed nervously. "Andrew already reviewed them last week. He mentioned you were stepping back from daily operations." The word stung. Stepping back, that was not my decision. I forced a polite smile. All the more reason to keep myself informed. "May I?" He hesitated, fumbling at his computer before finally turning the screen toward me. "They're not finalized yet, but here." I scanned the spreadsheet quickly. Years of practice made the irregularities leap out invoices that didn't align with client contracts. Inflated consulting fees paid to obscure firms and executive expenses that had nearly tripled in 6 months. "Who authorized these?" I asked, pointing to one egregious entry marked Strategic Market Research. Ms. Sabrina David admitted reluctantly. Andrew signed off. "And what research was actually conducted?" His face colored. "I don't know. Reports go directly to them." The air felt heavier as the implications took shape. I straightened, hiding my alarm behind a calm smile. "Thank you, David. Let's keep this between us for now. I'd like to surprise Andrew and Sabrina with how engaged I still am." Relief softened his features. "Of course, Mrs. Harrington." Back in my office, I closed the door and stared out the window. Patterns were forming dark and undeniable. My son and daughter-in-law were spending beyond reason, manipulating schedules and authorizing questionable expenses under my name. It could be incompetence, or it could be something far worse. The thought twisted in my chest. Could Andrew, the boy I had raised the heir I had once believed capable of carrying my legacy, truly be betraying me? My phone buzzed with a message from Robert, my second husband. "Dinner at Romano's tonight." Andrew and Sabrina want to celebrate the Jenkins deal. Another pang of unease. A social lunch, a rescheduled meeting, an expensive bracelet, all pieces of a puzzle I didn't yet fully see. But I would. One thing was certain, I had not built a thriving firm by ignoring my instincts. If Andrew and Sabrina were scheming, I would uncover the truth quietly, methodically, and without mercy. The unease that had gnawed at me during those first days refused to fade. If anything, it sharpened, carving away at the trust I had so carefully built with my son. But suspicions alone could not protect the company I had spent my life constructing. I needed evidence, unshakable, undeniable proof. A conversation at dawn. I arrived at the Harrington Advisory Building earlier than usual one Thursday morning, long before the staff began streaming in. The city outside was still rubbing the sleep from its eyes, the streets washed in pale light. At Helen Tran's desk, a fresh vase of flowers testified to her meticulous habits. She had been my assistant for 15 years, loyal to a fault. If there was anyone I could trust, it was her. "Mrs. Harrington," she whispered, startled to see me. "I need to speak privately," I said. "Not here. Harper's Cafe, 20 minutes. Her eyes widened, but she nodded without question. At the cafe tucked into a quiet corner, I laid out my concerns. Her expression grew more troubled with each word. "I've noticed things too," she admitted finally. "Andrew has been removing files from the secure server. He said it was to streamline client management, but I wasn't convinced. And the staff changes. All the senior people who were closest to you, they're gone. 7 departures in 4 months. All employees loyal to me. Replaced quietly one by one with younger staff who seemed to orbit around Andrew. Exit interviews, I asked. He handled them himself, Helen said softly. That's never happened before. A chill settled over me. My son wasn't just spending recklessly. He was consolidating control, recruiting an ally. I'll need your help, I told her. But you must understand the risk. If Andrew suspects, you don't need to finish, she interrupted firmly. You gave me this career, Mrs. Harrington. My loyalty isn't in question. Gratitude welled up inside me, sharp and unexpected. Then first, I need access to all communications between Andrew, Sabrina, and our top 20 clients from the last 6 months. Quietly. I can download the archives from the server, she said. No one will notice. Good. And second, I need information on any new business entities they might have created. My brother works at the state registration office, Helen mused. He might help. Off the record. Perfect, I said. A meeting in shadows. That afternoon, Helen arranged for me to meet Charles Donovan, our security chief, in an off-site cafe. A former police detective, Charles had the watchful eyes of a man who missed nothing. Grace filled me in, he said, leaning forward. If your suspicions are true, this isn't just internal misconduct. We're looking at potential criminal charges. I know I admitted, but first I must be absolutely certain. He nodded approvingly. The security system records audio in all executive suites, video and common areas. As the owner, you have rights to access. But if you intend to use this for prosecution chain of custody matters, let me worry about the law later. For now, I need confirmation. Within an hour, he had installed a secure application on my tablet that granted me access to the feeds. Another weapon in my arsenal. Discovering the hidden companies. That evening, Helen texted me 3 names: S&A Consulting Group, Meridian Capital Holdings, and Lakeshore Asset Management. All had been registered within the past year, all listing Andrew and Sabrina as principals. The audacity stole my breath. They were brazen enough to use our family name in one of the entities, Meridian Capital Holdings, as though mocking the legacy I had built. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my home office staring at the evidence. It was no longer a suspicion. My son and his wife were running a parallel empire, siphoning clients and money under the guise of legitimate expenses. but I needed more something so irrefutable that even Robert, who always defended Andrew, could not deny it. The trap. Opportunity arrived almost too easily. When Andrew finally accepted my invitation for lunch, I planted the seed. "Robert and I are revising our estate plan," I explained casually. "I need the login details for my investment account, but I think I left them in a blue folder on my nightstand. Could you pick it up when you're over this weekend?" I saw the flash in his eyes, quickly masked by a dutiful smile. "Of course, Mom. Happy to help." The folder existed, but inside were fabricated documents, carefully designed statements, suggesting more than $8 million in personal assets and details for a special reserve credit card with a staggering limit. The account was real, but empty, its sole purpose to act as bait. If Andrew took it, I would know. If he didn't, the other evidence was already damning enough. Either way, the trap would tell me the truth. Midnight proof. That Saturday, I cooked dinner for Robert and Andrew's family. We ate, laughed politely, and spoke of ordinary things. Later, claiming a headache, I excused myself to the bedroom. On the nightstand sat the blue folder. Nearby, a discreet camera recorded everything. At 3:14 a.m., my tablet buzzed with an alert. I watched, breath tight in my chest, as Andrew slipped into my room. He paused, gazing at my sleeping form, then quietly lifted the folder and opened my purse. My premium credit card vanished into his pocket. Back in the guest room, he and Sabrina pored over the fabricated account statements, their voices low but audible. "This is perfect," Sabrina whispered. "We can use the card for Bali. She'll never notice." "Just be careful," Andrew said, though his grin betrayed him. "A few gifts the trip, nothing obvious." I stopped the playback, my stomach hollow. The suspicion was no longer a shadow. It had shape voice proof. The spending spree. By morning, alerts filled my phone. First-class flights to Bali, $32,400. A 5-star resort booking, $28,500. A designer watch, $62,000. A diamond necklace, $45,800. In less than 2 hours, nearly $170,000 had been drained. By noon, the total crossed $240,000. They hadn't even tried to hide it. Robert, sipping his coffee, looked up when he saw my expression. "Everything all right? Just work," I lied smoothly. "Nothing you need to worry about." In truth, everything had changed. Organizing the evidence, I forwarded the alerts to Helen, attaching the video stills of Andrew pocketing the card. By Sunday evening, we had compiled a damning portfolio. Bank transfers funneled to S&A Consulting Group. Corporate registration documents for all 3 shadow firms. Expense reports authorizing strategic research with no deliverables. Video evidence of Andrew stealing the folder. Itemized receipts from their lavish spending spree. On Monday, a confidential meeting with the board would reveal it all. Sabrina's boast. Before that day arrived, I witnessed one more scene through the security feed. Late Sunday night, Andrew and Sabrina sat in his office reviewing papers. "The Jenkinses are practically ours," she said. "Once Clara introduces us formally, they'll never realize their assets are being transferred to Lakeshore, not Harrington Advisory." Andrew laughed. "Mother's stamp of approval is still our best marketing strategy." I shut off the tablet. Rage and sorrow braided together inside me. They weren't merely stealing, they were using my reputation as bait for their scheme. Resolve, I had my proof. More than enough. But proof alone was insufficient. Andrew and Sabrina needed to be exposed in such a way that no denial, no spin, no family loyalty could save them. The trap had sprung and the prey had revealed themselves. Now came the final stage, the confrontation. The final lunch. On Monday, the day of reckoning, I dressed with deliberate care. My navy suit fit like armor pearls gleaming at my ears. I needed every ounce of composure. The board meeting was set for 2:00 p.m., but first there was lunch with Andrew, one last encounter before the curtain lifted. We met at Bella's, one of his favorite Italian restaurants. He arrived on time, exuding confidence in a brand new suit, a gleaming Patek watch on his wrist, no doubt part of the weekend's shopping spree with my baited credit card. "Mother," he said warmly, kissing my cheek, as though nothing stood between us. "You look wonderful." I smiled politely, noting the flicker in his eyes when I asked, "Did you find that blue folder I mentioned?" He hesitated, then lied with practiced ease. I looked, but it wasn't there. "Perhaps you moved it." "I must have," I replied smoothly, though my heart hardened. He didn't know I had already seen everything: the theft, the spending, the whispered plans. The rest of lunch unfolded in a strange play of pretense. He spoke about client strategies, Sabrina's innovations, and the upcoming presentation for the Jenkins family. I nodded at the right places, even laughed, but underneath I was cataloging every falsehood. When my phone buzzed with a message from Helen reminder, "Emergency board meeting 2:00 p.m., I knew Andrew had received the same notice. His eyes flicked to his phone, a flash of alarm crossing his face before vanishing. I excused myself soon after. As I left Bella's, I knew with painful certainty this would be the last normal lunch I would ever share with my son. Gathering of the board. The conference room smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh coffee. 8 faces turned toward me as I entered 5 board members, our chief legal counsel, the external auditor, and Robert, who looked perplexed by the secrecy of the summons. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." I began, voice steady despite the turmoil in my chest. "I apologize for the urgency, but the matter is critical." Helen distributed sealed folders, instructing the board not to open them yet. Robert frowned. "Clara, what is this about? Where's Andrew?" "He has been informed," I replied. "Whether he attends is his decision." Moments later, Helen returned with Sabrina in tow. Always poised today, she seemed rattled. She took a seat reluctantly, eyes darting around the table. "We were just about to discuss the activities of S&A Consulting Meridian Holdings and Lakeshore Asset Management," I said calmly. Color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I believe you do," I replied. The evidence unfolds. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out the case methodically. Inflated consulting fees directed to companies secretly owned by Andrew and Sabrina. Clients diverted to those shadow firms. Emails confirming intent to resign and launch their new venture at the annual gala. Registration documents bearing their signatures. And finally, the footage. Andrew stealing the blue folder from my nightstand, Sabrina whispering about Bali, the luxury purchases totaling nearly $250,000. When the board opened their folders, the silence was deafening. Page after page of irrefutable evidence stared back at them. Robert's hands shook as he flipped through the documents. "This can't be true," he whispered. "Not Andrew." "It is," I said softly. Sabrina's mask of composure crumbled. She began tapping furiously on her phone until I stopped her. "Put it away, Sabrina. Damage control is too late." The door swung open. Andrew entered, his charm rehearsed but faltering, as he saw the grim faces, the folders, the still image of him pocketing my credit card on the screen. "What's going on here?" he asked, voice strained. "Sit down," I told him. "We're discussing how you and Sabrina have been defrauding this company." Denial and collapse. He tried the soothing tone I had heard him use on clients. "This is a massive misunderstanding. Yes, Sabrina and I have been exploring independent opportunities, but nothing illegal. As for the card, I thought it was a company expense card. A mistake." I leaned forward. "A $62,000 watch. First-class tickets to Bali. That is no mistake." His words faltered, the practiced explanations crumbling. Robert's face was pale. "Son, tell me this isn't true." "Dad, we were just trying to modernize to build something new." With stolen funds and betrayed clients, Robert's voice cracked with anguish. Sabrina, sensing the tide against them, snapped. "Starting a new business isn't a crime, and that credit card that was Andrew's error, not mine." The instant betrayal in her tone made Andrew flinch. The board members exchanged grim looks. Our legal counsel cleared his throat. If this were pursued, the potential charges include embezzlement fraud, breach of fiduciary duty serious offenses. Andrew and Sabrina blanched. For the first time, fear replaced defiance. The ultimatum. I slid a document across the table. This is a separation agreement. If you sign, the company will not pursue criminal charges. The terms are clear: immediate resignation, full restitution of stolen funds, dissolution of your entities, and a legally binding 5-year non-compete. Andrew stared at the paper face, unreadable. And if we refuse, then every file in those folders goes directly to the district attorney. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. Robert's eyes glistened with tears. Andrew, please. My son's shoulders sagged. The performance was over. The aftermath of signing. An hour later, the documents were signed. Sabrina muttered bitter complaints about losing everything: the house, the cars, the lake property that had been their dream. Yes, I said coldly, you'll lose the luxuries bought with stolen money. That seems just. The lawyer confirmed the agreement. Andrew and Sabrina were to vacate their offices immediately. Their departures would be announced as a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. The public would never know the ugliness behind the curtain for the company's sake, not theirs. As they rose to leave, Andrew paused at the door. His voice, low and strained, carried back to me. I never meant it to go this far. It started small. Then it snowballed. It always does, I replied. Private reckoning. When the others departed, Robert and I remained at the table. The silence between us was unbearable. How long have you known? He asked finally. Suspected weeks, certain only days. And you didn't tell me. You wouldn't have believed me, I said gently. You never have when it comes to Andrew. His face crumpled. So this is my fault. I defended him, indulged him. I helped create this. No, I corrected. Andrew made his choices, but we did fail him by shielding him from consequences. Now he faces them at last. Robert's anguish cut me deeper than my son's betrayal. My marriage, like my company, was standing on a precipice. A company saved, a family broken. Outside the boardroom, life at Harrington Advisory continued. Phones ringing, assistants walking briskly, meetings humming. No one knew the earthquake that had shaken our family and nearly destroyed the firm. I remained seated long after Robert left, staring at the signed agreements. My son was gone, his ambitions collapsed into shame and restitution. My marriage hung in fragile suspension. Yet amid the hollow exhaustion, I felt something unexpected: clarity. I had faced the truth, shielded the company, and forced accountability. There were no victors here, only varying degrees of loss. But perhaps from the ashes, something stronger might emerge. Picking up the pieces. The days following the board confrontation blurred together in a haze of paperwork, hushed conversations, and careful management of appearances. To the outside world, the departure of Andrew and Sabrina was announced as a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. The statement was bland, crafted by legal counsel. But it served its purpose. Clients remained calm, employees reassured. Inside the company, however, the shift was seismic. Without Andrew's shadow influence, the atmosphere changed almost overnight. People spoke more freely, decisions moved more smoothly, and long-overlooked talent rose to the surface. Helen, who had been my steadfast ally throughout, took on greater responsibility. At my recommendation, she was promoted to Director of Operations. Her reaction, humble, almost tearful, reminded me how blind Andrew had been to her competence. You've been doing this work quietly for years, I told her. It's time you had the title to match. The board approved unanimously. With her in the role, new systems of oversight were established, ensuring no single executive could again wield unchecked power. The company, once under siege from within, began to steady itself. Strains at home. If the office breathed easier, my home did not. Robert and I moved carefully around each other in the weeks that followed. He retreated to the guest room, claiming he needed space. Conversations were polite, but the ease of decades together was gone. One evening, over a quiet dinner, he finally spoke what weighed on both of us. "I've been blaming you," he admitted, eyes fixed on his glass, as if exposing Andrew was the betrayal, not what he actually did. "I see now how wrong that was." I said nothing, letting him continue. I shielded him all his life. When he bent rules as a boy, when he lied as a young man, I called it ambition, charm, potential. I refused to see the pattern. You tried to warn me. I wouldn't hear it. And now, his voice broke. Now I can't decide if I failed him more as a father or as a man. I reached across the table, laying my hand gently over his. Andrew made his choices. Robert. We didn't put that credit card in his hand, he did. But yes, we protected him from consequences for too long. It was not absolution, but it was the closest I could come. Andrew and Sabrina's descent. Through Robert's occasional contact, I heard fragments of Andrew and Sabrina's new reality. They had moved into a small apartment across town, trading luxury cars for secondhand sedans. The lake house deal had collapsed, the down payment forfeited. Sabrina attempted to relaunch herself as a social media influencer, but without wealth to display her following dwindled. She took a job in retail, a humbling step for someone who once boasted about exclusive galas. Andrew worked in the back office of a small manufacturing firm doing basic accounting. The non-compete barred him from finance, and word of his disgrace, though never formally announced, had circulated enough to poison opportunities. Each month, restitution payments arrived, never late, always resentful. They would take years to repay what they had stolen, but the steady deductions stood as a reminder. Actions had consequences. A marriage tested. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Robert sat me down in the living room. "I went to see Andrew," he confessed. My chest tightened. Why? I had to. I needed to see him for myself to know he was surviving. He sighed. "He's angry at you most of all. But beneath it, I think he knows. Reality is beginning to crack the shell of entitlement." "And what did you say to him?" I told him the restitution stays, that he has to honor his agreement. For once, I didn't excuse him. The words surprised me. For decades, Robert had been Andrew's defender. Now, finally, he was standing beside me. "Thank you," I whispered. He took my hand. I should have done it long ago. That night, for the first time in weeks, he returned to our bed. The distance between us remained, but it felt crossable now. 6 months later, by autumn, Harrington Advisory had not only survived, but thrived. Freed from internal sabotage, we retained more clients, gained new referrals, and strengthened our leadership team. Helen exceeded every expectation, proving herself a steady, principled leader. At home, Robert and I built new habits, weekly dinners, out honest conversations, no more silence in place of disagreement. The raw wound of Andrew's betrayal began to scar over, though it would never fully heal. Then, one morning, Helen's voice came through the intercom. "Mrs. Harrington, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. It's Andrew." My heart faltered. "Send him in." The apology. The man who entered my office barely resembled the son I had known 6 months earlier. The swagger was gone, replaced by weariness. His clothes were plain, his hair simply cut his frame leaner. "Mother," he said quietly, standing awkwardly just inside the door. "Andrew," I gestured to the chair opposite. "Sit." For a moment, silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. "I'm not here to ask for money," he said at last, as if anticipating my suspicion. "I know that's what you might expect, but I'm not. I came because I owe you an apology, a real one." I studied him wary. "Go on." "I've spent these months blaming you, blaming Dad, blaming circumstances. But in therapy, yes, I've been seeing someone. I realized I've lived my whole life feeling entitled. I thought rules didn't apply to me. I used Dad's indulgence and your success as excuses. But the truth is, I made choices, bad ones, and I betrayed you. His voice cracked, but he pressed on. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to hear me say I was wrong. I felt a lump in my throat. That took courage to admit. He nodded. I'm also volunteering teaching financial literacy at a community center. It's nothing compared to what I cost you, but for the first time, I feel like I'm using what I know to help instead of hurt. We spoke for nearly an hour. He admitted resentment, jealousy, a sense of failure that had festered beneath his charm. I admitted my regrets, focusing on performance instead of character, letting Robert's indulgence go unchallenged. It was not reconciliation, but it was a beginning, hope and realism. That evening, I told Robert about the visit. His eyes filled with cautious hope. Maybe he's changing. Maybe I agreed, but words are easy. What matters is time and action sustained. Robert nodded. Fair enough. Still, it's something. Later, as we prepared for bed, he asked me softly, "Do you regret it?" The trap, the exposure, all of it. I thought of the chaos, the strain on our marriage, the distance from my son. Then I thought of the company restored, the employees protected, and Andrew just beginning to face himself. No, I said. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences, even if that someone is your child. Closing reflections. 6 months earlier, I had feared the destruction of everything I built: my company, my marriage, my family. In truth, destruction had come, but from it renewal as well. Harrington Advisory stood stronger than before. My marriage, tested nearly to breaking, now rested on firmer ground of honesty. And my son, still flawed, still untrustworthy, perhaps had finally taken his first real steps toward growth. Trust once broken would never be innocent again. But perhaps in its place could grow something sturdier, a bond tempered by truth, scarred but resilient. For the first time in many years, I felt no urge to control the outcome. I would let time do its work, and I was content to wait. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.